So I don't recognize everybody's names up here, but maybe a couple of you. But if you've been on a call with me leading it before, then you'll know that I really, really, really appreciate it if you turn your cameras on. I know in the college environment, a lot of people don't do that, but in the entrepreneur world, we do. So it would be great if you would turn your camera on. Join us in conversation. So thanks for being here today. My name is Lisa Kember, and I'm the Business Development Manager at Edge. Um, and so we're really, really glad to have you here. Glad to have Christine Brunsden here with us today as well. And I know a lot of you have come in hoping to get a chance to talk to her. So we're going to make that happen today. So thanks for being here. So give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to pull up our presentation here. I'm just going to start by giving you a little bit of background on Edge. So, and Christine, I'm going to make you co-host so you can let people in while I'm chatting, and then I'll do the same for you. How about that?
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay. So we're talking today a little bit about creating a social enterprise and a lasting legacy, which I know many of you are doing here at Edge. And so we're really glad to have you in our community and here today. I want to start, first of all, by doing a land acknowledgement. And I'd like to acknowledge the land on which we gather has been and still is the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations. Since time immemorial, numerous Indigenous nations have lived and passed through this territory. We recognize that this territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and Two-Row Wampum Treaty, which emphasizes the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respectful relationships. Sheridan and Edge confirm that it is our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. We're grateful for the opportunity to be working and living on this land. So if you've been around Edge at all, then you've probably heard us talk a little bit about some of what we do. But for those of you who don't know, this is an environment at Edge where people are welcome to come and build enterprises, build businesses, build nonprofits, build ventures, basically, that are solving social problems. And so we are an environment where you can come and safely do that, operate with other entrepreneurs around you, and get the mentorship and support you need, sometimes the emotional support you need, sometimes the knowledge you need in order to build and grow your organization. And then we also become a gateway to a number of other resources within the college and within the entrepreneurial ecosystem, both locally in the Peel and Halton region and beyond as well. And since we started 4 years ago, we have launched, we've worked with founders, 383 founders who have launched 329 ventures. They've created a lot of jobs, and they've raised a lot of money. And when we first started, we were not social impact focused. So we still have some members that are, building pure businesses, but we are slowly transitioning toward a social impact focused hub. And so 53% of the ventures at Edge right now are social enterprises, and 51% are underrepresented founders. So hopefully if you are ever interested in checking out Edge, or if you're already in the Edge community, have found a safe place there for yourself and the support that you need. Today, we're going to be talking with Christine Brunsden, who has, she's developing a whole bunch of things in the social impact space. And she's taken and built on a foundation of a great career, and has been at this now for how many years, Christine? I've forgotten now.
2.5.
2.5 years. Wow, you've done a lot in 2.5 years. And so we're going to hear about that today. So if you're just joining us and you've just come in the last few minutes, then please turn your camera on, because we do like to make this interactive, and that is much easier to do when we see you on camera. Omar, thank you. You're one of the rare few. So glad to see your face and have you join us in that way here today. So Christine, fumbling kind of introduction, but here you are. Glad you're here. And we're going to talk a little bit about your background and your experience and how you've come to be in this place today. I will tell everybody on the call that I've known Christine now for 2 years, actually. So I must have met you just a few months into your venture. And I have found her to be one of the most driven people, but driven from a heart place. While she is very clear on her financial goals, she's also more than clear on her social impact goals. So we're going to talk about that today. So Christine, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you. Were you going to share your screen, or did you want me to share your slide?
You can share it if you like. That's fine.
2 seconds. That's going to take me a minute. Why don't you talk a little bit about your background while I pull that up?
Absolutely. So thank you for inviting me here, Lisa, to have this conversation. It's super important to me from a number of different perspectives, and you'll hear that in a moment. So my journey to get here was really working within bank-owned trust companies for about almost 25 years, actually. And near the end, becoming increasingly frustrated with living out somebody else's vision, mission. And it wasn't centered to my own heart. And so it just got more and more difficult to continue on the journey. And I was seeing things that, I would like to change, but didn't have the ability to change within the environments I was working in. And so really it all came to fruition in October of 2019. Where we amicably, said, hey, this is just not working out. I'm going to go. And within 29 days, I had my corporation incorporated, and I was off to the races. Now, I didn't launch right away. It took me a little bit of time to get my website and everything done. And I actually launched my business in February of 2020. Bad timing.
Just in time for a little bit of chaos.
Just in time, right? Lucky for me, they call me Calm Christine, so was weathering that storm just fine, and was very happy to be introduced to yours and Ted's group, a great group of entrepreneurs that welcomed me with open arms from the moment I started Thursday morning meetings with both of you. And so that was great. I had a community of people that I could really kind of come and interact with, because being an entrepreneur is sometimes a little bit lonely. So it's just nice to be able to come in and have, a space where people are open and communicative about, the entrepreneur journey and sharing. And also that group of people, unlike any other group I think that I've ever known, they truly are a family. And they're all about sharing, and you get to know people, it's everything that you need to know, and everybody you need to know is in one room every week. So I was very, very happy to be in that group.
Well, we were glad to have you. You certainly get everybody motivated pretty well. It's good. I've just posted in the chat about that group. So if you're interested, you can just email me and I'm happy to send you an invite. So Christine, I have your slides ready. Do you want to talk a little bit about the company?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
There you go.
Awesome. So really, what you alluded to, Lisa, is absolutely 100% correct. When I launched into entrepreneurism, I don't think I thought about it as entrepreneurism at first. I thought about creating a business for myself that I would work within. But it didn't take me long to realize that there was still something that was burning inside of me that was not fulfilled. And when I took a step back, it was really more about my purpose, right? So it took me a little bit of time and a conversation I had with actually a couple of different people. But I really realized that all of the things that have come into my life by virtue of my personal circumstance and my professional experiences and knowledge and network, I believe have been curated for a purpose. And my purpose really is, and passion is to put these things into action. It's about, and you'll see this on the next slide, but it's all about bringing calm to a whole set of life experiences, events that tend to be associated with chaos. So whether it's estate planning, or whether it's planning for somebody with a disability, or planning for aging parents and you're a caregiver, all of those things are not anything that were ever taught in school. They were never taught to me when I got a job. And there was no magical fairy that showed up at my bedside when I had my children and taught it to me then either. And so what I find with most people is they're thrust into this and this learning at a time when it's often a crisis. There's something going on, and that is the worst time in the world to learn. So everything that I have designed here is about the following mantra, and that is learn, prepare, be guided, and end up being calm at the end. So the businesses that I am currently building, I have, so Trusted Legacy is a business that I brought in. It's my arm of the business that was kind of doing all of these things all at once. And then I decided I was going to kind of pull that apart and put it into different segments. So the one business that I'm building right now, we call that Disability AI, or AKA Bet You Didn't Know, is all about planning online for disabilities. So what I find about disabilities is that they are one of the most misunderstood things out there. A lot of people don't know what constitutes a disability in Canada today. They don't know what they have access to. So it's all about bringing education and awareness to the greater, the country and to individuals through other businesses. So once we look at that business, and I think, okay, so I'm delivering some disability awareness and planning online, how do I drive a social impact mission from that business? And so for me, it was, okay, we need to have a foundation. A portion of the profits from that business would go into that foundation. That foundation is really designed to solve digital literacy across marginalized populations, right? As part of that, I thought, well, how do I kickstart that foundation? So everything is kind of going deeper into the rabbit holes, if you will. But how do I kickstart that foundation? And really that just became, there's a project that is started. And I've had some really great wins in the last 2 weeks on this. So we've gotten funding, so $250,000 of funding to the foundation. We were granted space in a Web 3.0 metaverse space. So it's the artist galleries. These are all disabled artist galleries where their story is playing when you walk into the gallery, and they could put up a video of them creating their art. Say they paint with their toes or something. Those things are all there. So we're taking these artists, we're creating a replicable system for them to come in and create their art as NFTs, to put them up for sale, and a portion of the sale of the NFT goes back to the foundation. So that is really Disability AI, or AKA Bet You Didn't Know. And the other problem that I find is probably one of the bigger problems, and this is where I thought, okay, if I'm going to pull apart Trusted Legacy, where am I going to start with that? And that is the end-to-end caregiver navigation. So what I find about this is that when we are thrust into the responsibility of caring for a loved one, be it an aging parent or a disabled child, the journey is fraught with roadblocks, red tape. It's not easily understood. And so I thought we need to create an environment where people can come in and learn, prepare, be guided, and end up calm. And so that really is an environment where we have a lot. There's 3 different ways of learning in there. You can do it yourself. There's a do it with me approach, and eventually there will be a do it for you approach. But it's designed around meeting you where you're at, whether you're in a crisis, whether it's something that's already happened, whether it's in something that you're kind of in the middle of it now, or it's something you're anticipating happening in the future. And there's a multidisciplinary system that's been designed in that business. And then we get down to the bottom left-hand corner there, where we talk about legacy literacy. Again, legacy is not something that most people know a whole lot about. And so in that business, it's a mixture of education, workshops, and then you'll see down at the bottom, there's a future directory or marketplace. With 1.87 billion websites online today and 220,000 more coming online every single day, we really, in order to stand out in that, you're going to have to do something, and Google's not going to help you. So Google will help you if you know exactly what keywords to search, but if you don't know that, it's not going to help you. So that's where that directory or marketplace is coming into play, is that I want to be able to help direct people to all of the things that they need, best in class businesses, products and services, all designed around legacy. There's a future vision map there for a social impact collaborative platform. So I'm not going to discuss it right now, but it's something that's on the future vision map. And then the wisdom councils, there's a number of different wisdom councils, a disability wisdom council, an aging wisdom council, and numerous others. The disability wisdom council is where I'm starting. And this is a group of people with years of experience in disabilities or disability advocates, all coming together, sharing their collective wisdom and experience, and deciding, is there another business model out there that we can launch with some sort of social impact mission to solve another problem? I mean, I'm only one person, so I can only do so much. But this is kind of my vision of how do I solve as many of these problems? How do I take the experiences that I've had and the knowledge and my network, put it all together and create something that is going to leave the world a better place for everybody that comes after me that has to deal with any of these things.
It's a powerful vision. I guess you're 2 years in, you've been at this for 2 years. You've accomplished a lot. Some of it is visionary, but some of it you're laying foundation now. So how's all this happening so fast?
Well, it wasn't happening as quickly as I wanted it to. And I think a lot of that was my own naivety and inexperience. But of course, joining that group. And then, I think Clubhouse came at the right time for me. It came at the right time for a lot of people, being an online, audio app, right, where people are sharing and connecting. And I developed an absolutely amazing community of people in there. Mm-hmm. And I literally, every second I had outside of the businesses, I was on Clubhouse, just finding my tribe, talking to people about what I was doing, gathering wisdom. And out of that came some really amazing opportunities for me. Actually, one of them where I'm now working within a private equity. It's a female founder incubator, private equity firm. They loved what I was doing. They welcomed me with open arms as well. And they said, you know what? We want you to come in. We want you to learn the forum process. We want you to go through forum. We want you to be able to teach these forums in the future so that you can help other female founders really get launched in their businesses.
Love it. I love it. You've got a venture you're building to create calm in chaos, and yet you hustle harder than anybody I know. It's kind of ironic.
Again, it's the calm, right? So you got to remember, I was born into a family with a sister who was living in a vegetative state. So I'm sure that was probably somewhat chaotic for my parents, but then when she was placed in care, we used to go up there. That for me was chaotic. I didn't like going there. And it took a little while, but my mother very calmly said to me when I was, able to speak to her about this, probably 4 or 5, I said to her, I said, I don't understand why somebody would put somebody on this earth to suffer that way. She said, she's not suffering. Her every need is met. She's only here for one reason and one reason only. I thought, okay, well, what's that? And she said, it's to show you how lucky you are. And don't you forget that. Mm. So pretty powerful words for a 4 or 5-year-old to hear. And it has always resonated with me, right? I am luckier than a lot of the people that I work with. And, it doesn't do any good to go flying off the handle in times when there's things that need to be done. And I learned that through the bank environment, right? Managing hundreds of estates, thousands of trusts and powers of attorney and guardianships, looking after people who can't look after themselves. You learn this over time. I think it's almost a learned calm, because I think I wouldn't be as calm had I not gone through this over and over again. It's like, the very first time you go to perform surgery as a surgeon, I'm sure that, you're not as calm, but on the 100th or 1,000th or 10,000th surgery, you're probably quite calm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've had some hiccups along the way. We were talking before this call about your journey to find the right partners for the different pieces of this vision.
Absolutely. So, I was the whole legacy literacy piece with what I designed when I was designing with Legacy U. So because of the pandemic, I really, at one point, I felt like I was like curled up in the ball on the floor, just like bleeding out. I'm like, it couldn't have happened at a worse time. I can't get on a network. What am I going to do? And I sought out a mentor in the industry. And I said to her, Kit, I'm kicked and I'm down and I don't know what to do. She said, well, my dear, you have a gift and you just need to learn how to teach your gift. I encourage you to go and read this book and come back to me and tell me your thoughts. And so when I did, I thought, oh my gosh, you're so right. This is stuff.
What was the book?
It's Danny Ini's book, Teach Your Gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that book and I really realized, oh my goodness, it's so right. And I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe I can't do this by myself. So I sought out somebody in the industry that I knew had a very similar mindset to me. And I brought this person in and again, not having any experience in this, I don't know what I was thinking, but I decided to run a 5-week summit with 60 speakers. And I was going to put that together in 7.5 weeks. Had I known how much work it was, I probably would have given myself a longer time frame, but it absolutely forced me. It forced me to get it done. And it was a great, we had 350 people sign up to attend that 5-week session. And so there was people, kind of coming on and off all day long on the Wednesdays, but it was really fantastic because we designed it around not leaving a legacy, but really living your legacy. And I talk about this a lot. So living a legacy to me is, what do you really want to be remembered for at the end of life, right? Then when you can decide what you want to be remembered for, you can reverse engineer all of this to make sure that you actually get there. Mm-hmm. So bringing this person in, at the time he was teaching at a college. And so we kind of pushed the development of the business off until the summertime when he had more time. And then summertime came and he was very busy and wanting to take time with his family. And I can't, you can't say to somebody, oh, you don't do that. Right. I mean, we all have infinite, like we all have the same amount of time. Mm-hmm. And time is our most precious commodity. And maybe, he's got aging, relatives and family and other things. So I couldn't push too hard. I tried. But then I kind of think, like it's just not getting done. And I kind of reached out and said, I feel like I'm in a bus with square wheels, if that makes any sense. So I'm reaching down to pull you up on the bus, but we're just not going anywhere. And at the same point in time, I was introduced to somebody else who had a very similar vision and mission to mine on the caregiving side, which brought in a little bit of the legacy literacy piece as well. And so I thought, okay, you know what, because we're not progressing forward on the other piece, I'm going to shelve it for now. And I had conversations around it, said, we're going to shelve it for now. I'm going to proceed with this other portion, this other piece of the puzzle first. And I was really developing this. And I gave this co-founder of mine 2 hours of my day every day for the better part of 8 months. And I had filled all of the hubs that are there. So there's a bunch of different hubs that are looking after all areas of the puzzle within the caregiver navigation. So I'd filled all those hubs and I'd started putting together an advisory board. And I went back to the conversation that we had in the very beginning, where he wanted 51% of the business because he'd had a couple of false starts. And I thought, this is just not comfortable. But in the meantime, I had also gone through forum training at Zadazi. And I was feeling very empowered from that exercise. I felt, there was a confidence that had been built up inside of me because of that forum training. And that I had access to a really diverse group of people that are really like a family for me. And also a really safe environment to share. And I was sharing some of these things. So, it was probably one of the hardest conversations I had to have, but I felt I had to have it. So we booked a conversation on like a Friday, and I said, where are you thinking at this, juncture of the equity piece? I said, I've done a lot of reading. I've looked at Mike Moyer's Slicing Pie. I've done a lot of work. And I'm amazing. I'm looking at this as we are walking down the aisle right now. And you are valuing yourself here. And I am feeling like I am much further down the chain than you. And yet I put in so much work and so much effort and built so much of the business up. And I said, I'm just trying to understand. I'm very visual as well. So I said, if you could write on a piece of paper all of the skill sets that you're bringing to this business, it allows me to do my checks and balances in a pro and con kind of way. And he said, well, I don't really write that stuff down. So we'll have a conversation. Let me think about it over the weekend, because on the Friday, he was still at 51. And then he came back on Monday and said, yeah, I've thought about it. And I still think I'm at 40, you're at 30, and then everybody else is at 30. And I thought, I'm still not an equal for some reason. And I said, what's the reason that you feel like there's something you feel that you bring to the table that is more than what I have? And he said, yeah, I'm really good at managing teams. I'm amazing at curating virtual teams. I'm great at leadership. I have got a lot of entrepreneurial experience. There was a number of different things that he had proffered up in a list. And he's got a 70,000 list from another venture that he has. And I thought, okay, so let me look at this. And I said, I still feel like there's a disconnect, and I'm not going to minimize your skill sets and your experience and everything else. But what I would say is that all of the things that you've listed just now, this was the hardest part of the conversation. All the things you just listed are amazing skills, but they are amazing when you have a team to manage and clients to serve.
And you were building that team, were you not?
And that's just the thing. I brought in all of the people that we were going to have as team members. And unfortunately, like even when we started a Facebook page, the people that liked the Facebook page were all my community. I'm the one out there networking like crazy. And he says, oh yeah, but I don't do any of that. I'm good back here at building this. And so, I still was not. He said, well, let's think it over one more night. I'll come back tomorrow and give you my decision. And the next day he came back and he said, I just don't think we can move forward where one of us feels undervalued. And I thought, well, I don't know if that's you that's feeling undervalued, but I know I certainly feel undervalued. So it was probably the best of the best. But you know what? The saying, when one door closes, another opens. I went back to my community at Zadazi, and within that community, didn't there's an individual who is a fractional CEO, fractional COO. And when I explained what was going on, I said, I'm the visionary, but I'm also the minutia. And I need somebody that connects those two. And he said, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I do. And I said, I think there's something we need to discuss here then. I said, would you be willing to, kind of let some of their things that you're doing, maybe push them down your list a little bit more and join me on this venture? And he said, 100%, I'm all about some really supporting female founders, and I love your vision and your mission. And by all means, we'll work this out. And I started talking more about it. And the next thing you know, I've got other people that are also coming to the table and helping out with, I got a global brand strategist who said, hey, we'll work this out somehow. Right. So I think the more that you open up the conversation, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, don't talk about your ventures as an entrepreneur. But I say, you know what, if somebody were going to do it, they would have already done it.
Oh,
right.
You're talking about the confidentiality and the, putting your ideas
Yeah.
under NDA or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So the more I found I talked about
it. Ideas are a dime a dozen. It's the execution that really matters, right?
Right. And the more I found I talked about it, the more people that were getting behind me, maybe because of the social impact side of the business too. Because with this caregiver business, I'm trying to solve ageism in the workplace as well. And I don't care what age you're at, as long as you've got some experience to bring to the table for me and really serve a great community of caregivers who are trying to work through this. And actually, if you have experience, it's probably better. Right. And we'll work around you. I mean, if you've got a caregiver for a family member, that's okay. We'll work around that.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go back to the partner discussion, because you're touching on something that we bump into at Edge a little bit. And I mean, I think every entrepreneur bumps into it. Every person really bumps into it in some ways. Well, I don't know, maybe men don't, I don't know. But I think as a woman, I quite often bump into things where it's hard to advocate for yourself. And maybe, sorry, to be fair to the men in the room, maybe that's a blanket statement. It's not really exactly true. I mean, I think everybody has their areas where it's hard to advocate for yourself. And, you did it not only with the same person, not only once, but what, 3 times before he walked away. That's a hard thing to do.
But I think that, it was hands down the forum training that I had. It bolstered my confidence, right? Mm-hmm. It gave me the courage and to know that there's a whole team of people behind me that have my back on this. Right. And I'm not going to be failing forward. I'm going to be moving forward with greater clarity. Mm-hmm. And feeling like I'm worthy of that position. And that, with their support, I'm going to get through it anyway. Mm-hmm. No matter what happens, whether he meets me halfway or doesn't meet me halfway, I've got a group of people that are there for me and believe in me.
So it's the foundation you got at this forum. So what's the name of the forum? We all need to hear more about it.
So I actually teach the forums as well now that I've received the training, and they're just through the private equity fund itself. So it's called Zadasi. It's ZAZADASI. Uh-huh. It is a few different founders, and the private equity fund is really all about empowering female entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurial journey. So they come in, they go through forum. There's lots of expertise within the groups as well. They can help you then move forward, whether it's putting together pitch decks or whatever it is. And they're there for early stage as well. As an incubator, they can provide funding as well for different ventures. So yeah.
So they're kind of a competitor to, well, I guess not competitor. We're all kind of friendly, cooperative people, but like similar to Edge.
Yeah, I guess in some ways, but they're designed for female founders. They're not about social impact. It's not a focus of theirs, although it would be a focus of mine. I put my hand up if they want me to run that part of it. I would be happy to do that. But yeah, they're just there. It's really, and it's out of the States. So I mean, most people that they probably are interacting with out of the States, but it's designed to be wherever, and they'll support whoever, wherever.
So, I mean, you've had over the last 2 years, and I suppose even before that, probably, but you've had difficult conversations with people. Um,
That's my life's work.
hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, you're touching on things people don't really want to talk about, for one thing. You
Mhm.
know, it touches at our deepest fears, and that's the core of what your venture is about. But there's also just like you've had difficult conversations with partners, with, co-marketing opportunities. When we were talking before, you were talking about all these different situations where things hadn't quite worked out, and you've had to sort of find a way to part ways. So that one partner was one example, but you've had multiple things. So how do you sort of stay encouraged even when you're getting these sort of difficult things going on?
It's really, it's my drive to succeed, to bring this vision to life. Knowing that, listen, I really do believe that purpose is a huge thing, right? Having been born into a family with a sister, like I told you, um, having a mother in a wheelchair as a result of catastrophic injuries from a car accident, and a father with dementia, and a child with disabilities, and an in-laws, her common law spouse with disabilities, and my grandson who's on the spectrum. Having all of those things, I think, for anybody, that would be probably crippling. Um, and you would have a hard time dealing with all of that. But I believe those things were all put in front of me, because I have also the actual expertise within the industry. So they give me the industry expertise. Now they also give me the practical side of things and let me deal with it from that perspective. And by marrying the two up together, I believe that it would be unconscionable for me, Lisa, not to do something with all that, and to solve a problem for everybody that's going to come after me to deal with it, where they at least have some modicum of success in dealing with it. They've got, the mentorship of others to be able to walk through that journey with greater confidence,
It's almost like you were chosen.
I believe.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, so one of the things that we talked about before, and I thought I'd get you to talk a little bit about here, is um, the energy that you're putting off. Because, you've had a lot of things happen for you. You haven't really talked about it, but you had the opportunity to write with Brian Tracy. You've paired up with some of the leading names in this space. You ran that event, you got connected to some like really high profile people. um, some would say that comes from your place of privilege as as somebody who's been in the corporate space, and maybe based on your ethnicity or whatever, but
For me,
there,
it's not
there's other
about,
reasons.
yeah, it's not about any of those things. Yes, I mean, by virtue of the fact that I am white, I guess I have privilege. Um, but when I look at it, and you're right, yes, I've actually had some pretty high profile names bringing them on the summit. Yes, I've co-authored a book with Brian Tracy. Um, that comes from pure persistence, right?
Yeah, you've got it in spades.
Right. And it's not, I mean, when I brought that larger personality onto our summit, I bugged and bugged. I went so far as to, I found out there was somebody that he knew that I also knew. And because we knew this mutual person, and this person was actually also on the summit, I said, do you know him? He said, yeah, I know him. And I said, would you mind doing me a favor? could you like text him or email him or something and tell him that I would really like him to speak? Oh, sure. But if had I not asked, Lisa, right? Had I not delved in to figure out, okay, so who does this person know that I know, right? Had I not done that, those things wouldn't have come, right? So it's that persistence, right? Figure out, go and ask people. Again, the more that you speak about things, the more that you put that energy out, as you talked about, the more that it comes back to you.
So I've been running this entrepreneur group for those of you who were on the call at the beginning, and some have just come in late. I've been running this entrepreneur group since the first shutdown happened back in March, 2 years ago now. And that's how I met Christine. And I remember you coming on the calls and you were talking about this event you were doing, and your energy, the energy you're putting off, was one of like, I will not fail. Where does that come from?
I
You're
would
asking
say,
everybody for help, but
yeah, I would say, I've always been highly driven, right? As a performance athlete in my youth, I figure skated 40 hours a week on top of going to school.
Mhm.
So always very driven. And I think part of it is just my genetic makeup, right? Life path 8, just
Mm.
again, it's the ambition that those are optimism and ambition and drive. Those are all things that are all part of my DNA. And you're right. I refuse to fail. Well, yes, everybody's going to fail sometimes, but I mean, there was no way that I was going to fall on my face on that event. I promised it. There were some days, I don't tell too many people this, but there was a couple of days that I actually stayed up for 40 plus hours straight, sitting at my desk, just working away, trying to, make sure that everything got done. Because you got to remember, even though I had a partner, of those 60 speakers, I arranged for 57 of them.
Wow. Wow.
And coordinating times for everybody. And I had Google spreadsheets going like crazy, and it was a lot of back and forth. Now, the good thing is that the partner I had in this was good at writing copy, was good at I would say it was a perfect marriage. He was good at all the things that I didn't necessarily want to take on. And I was doing all the organizational pieces and everything else that I was doing. So it was perfect in that I was able to rely on him to do some of those things. And even some of the graphics and things like that he was doing were fantastic. So we really said, it was the perfect marriage for that. And we're still working together. Is the corporation exactly the same as it was when we started it? No, it's not. But he recognized that, he said, I have low bandwidth for this right now, and I have zero appetite for risk. And I said, that's not necessarily the traits of an entrepreneur. Would you be willing to, reorganize maybe a little bit so I can bring in some additional help? And he said, yeah, for sure. Right. So again, it's, figure it out, ask, pivot. Those are all things you have to be willing to be really nimble and change on a dime when it's necessary.
The experience of you while you were doing that, because you were asking on every call for help, and it was almost like you were almost, don't take this the wrong way, you were almost annoying, but you were endearing at the same time, because you literally asked every week for something, and people stepped up and helped, right? So
yeah, I mean, I did have a lot of people help. And again, it was my inexperience, right? I literally went through like a 5-day challenge on learning how to put together summits. And then I said, and in that challenge, they made you set a date, right? So I set a date. I think that was like the end of September.
Aggressive. I remember that.
It was the end of September, or maybe beginning of September. And I set my date for November 18th.
And the purpose was to build a list and start to make connections at a different level. So you accomplished that. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Omar, you turned your camera on first, so you got a burning question?
Oh, that's really funny because I was actually typing my question in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. I just felt the vibe. It's your turn.
No, it's all good. It's all good. No, thank you, Christine, for the for your wisdom and just sharing your experiences going on your journey and in the entrepreneurial world. So a thought that came to my mind is something that many entrepreneurs and across various spectrums, whether it's social or for profit, whatever the case may be, is the element of startup costs and or having a runway. So I'm curious, you've last 2 years you've gone down a route where you've you know developed a couple of initiatives or businesses. I'm curious what, or if you had any early investors, had any capital that was injected from an investment perspective, or if you even invested on your own through your own capital for a runway.
Yeah, so everything I've done has been bootstrapped. And where I didn't bootstrap, that's where, I've gotten myself involved with people who are go-getters as well. And so we have not gone for funding on anything as of yet. I put in some of my own capital for sure. I went through an 18-week coaching program that was a fairly decent outlay of costs. So anything like that, I've put out myself. But then when it comes to bringing others in, I just got the quote for our global brand strategist. So the work he's done to date has been about 12,500. And I believe that going forward, he said it's probably going to be about 165,000. And I just said, do you believe in me? And he said, of course I believe in you. And I said, would you be willing to do something equity wise, like sweat equity, put in sweat equity, I'll give you some equity. I said, I just want to make sure that, we tie it off at a certain point, whether that's, I give you equity as you deliver, or we're able to buy you it afterwards, because probably you're not going to have to be on forever and ever. So again, I'm really open to possibilities. I read a ton about different ways of doing things. And I think I attract certain things just because I do have that heart, mission, and purpose thing going on that people maybe I am annoying to people. Maybe.
No, I was not at all. Sorry, I was afraid you'd take that the wrong way.
Right? No. I did, but I think it's putting it out there, and I think people look at this and go, "Oh gosh, she is solving a big problem," and I'm willing to help, and I'm willing to do it, and I know that it'll come back to me.
Follow up, Omar?
Yes, actually, that's really interesting. I know Tanya in the chat just said that's really interesting, outside the box thinking, especially with the element of that sweat equity and possibility to buy back afterwards. So that's actually quite interesting approach in terms of getting almost like some upfront in-kind supports as you go along. I'm curious about the aspect of the foundation. So the foundation that you mentioned, that sounds like it was a separate entity. Is that correct?
It is a separate entity now because I am a master financial advisor of philanthropy. I'm not going to go through the headache of actually getting a foundation set up through CRA, doing it that way. I'm actually using a donor advised fund. So there's existing foundations that are out there. You can actually create your own little donor advised fund underneath a greater foundation, and it can be set up within 24 hours at zero cost.
How do you do that? Sorry, I've not heard of this before. Have you, Omar?
No, and that's interesting because my understanding is going through the process of not-for-profit CRA status can be quite cumbersome, and then when you look at some of the restrictions legislatively and tax laws and different things like that, it really can stifle, in my perspective, when it comes to innovation, especially when you're trying to stay nimble and agile on those short pieces. So I'm curious, and that's actually really interesting. I never heard of that before, that you were able to set up that foundation underneath that brand, and then that there's existing foundations that can support that. It's almost like when I know of org mentorship. So like for some grassroots groups, they have organization mentors that are for-profit that are charities that sort of agree to take their funds on behalf of like a funding body like the ministry, and then they kind of funnel the funds to them as like an org mentor in that sense. But this is interesting. Can you share a little more about that?
Sure. So the way it works is now that we've gotten the $250,000 of funding for that. So what I'm doing is setting it up in this particular case, I'm actually setting it up through a bank donor advised fund, right? So or a bank foundation. Actually, it's owned by a trust company. Again, here goes my knowledge from the industry. The reason I'm doing it is that this particular foundation has the ability to accept gifts of things other than cash. So I wanted to have that there just in case. But really it's just, what we'll do is we'll reach out to the foundation. We'll come up with a name for our foundation. We will put in place, it's called a fund deed. So we just tell the foundation, we want to set up a foundation. Here's our foundation name. They will give us all the paperwork. We'll fill it out. So what it is the greater foundation has, think of it as like an umbrella, right? So you've got your foundation, here's an umbrella. And then you've got all these people underneath the umbrella, these little spokes coming off the umbrella with these people with their own individual donor advised funds that are part of the greater organization. And then what happens is it's pretty simple. They just send you on an annual basis a statement showing you what your ending balance is at December 31st. And then on an annual basis, you have to make granting recommendations of at least 3.5% from the foundation. And it's so anybody that puts donation money in, anybody that donates into the foundation would get an immediate donation receipt. And then you just carry on and you can keep on adding monies in whenever you want. So in some cases, Disability AI will be adding the money into the foundation. In other cases, it'll be other people. And then when those sales of the NFTs, again, those monies will go into the foundation as well. But the purpose of that foundation, as I said, is to really solve digital literacy across marginalized populations. So when we grant money out of the foundation, it has to be granted to a registered Canadian charity, right? Mm-hmm. So there are a whole bunch of different charities. I mean, I can think of some that, you can donate money to them and they will go out and they'll buy refurbished iPads for seniors. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of different organizations that, nonprofit, there's some nonprofits that work with these people as well, but it's just a matter of getting the money out of the foundation. And it's very simple. It's called a granting recommendation. You grant the money out to the charity and the charity goes and fulfills the purpose.
Right. And that's the element of that social enterprise perspective, because with the social enterprise, you're taking the profits and you're feeding it back into a charitable cause in that way. Yeah. So I get that. That's very interesting. Is there a website? Because that's a really fantastic formula and that would be a really neat resource to
you can connect with me. I know pretty much every single foundation that's out there, both private and ones that are part of banks, and different ones are different. There's different fees to them. Mm-hmm. The thing of the matter is that you don't have to worry about the ongoing audits and everything else. It's all done as part of the big foundations.
Right. The larger foundation, because they have their, their accountants and their infrastructure already set up for that.
Exactly.
Right. And the fees, like even the 3.5%, like, is that like 3.5% fee or?
No, the 3.5% is how much you have to grant out. The foundation that I'm looking at, the total fees on an annual basis are 1.75%, and that's including the investment management fee.
Oh, that's wild. That's wow.
So, Christine,
that's okay.
You put sorry, Omar. Can you put your contact information in the chat?
Yeah.
Although if you do that, you may get a few people reaching out.
That's fine.
I know. I'm just teasing. Tanya, you had questions about this very thing too. Do you want to ask your questions? Maybe she's in a noisy spot. She's been typing in the chat a little bit.
I haven't looked at all those. I know she's got some questions there.
Yeah, earlier she had just said the foundation piece. Oh, she says in a moment. Okay. Anybody else have a question?
She's walking the dog.
So the cat on my shoulder would have been okay. There's Christine's contact information in the chat. Does anyone else have a question? So, Omar, did you have another one?
No, I'll ask it
Felt like
afterwards.
I
It's
cut
okay.
you off.
I'm doing the same thing, Omar. So just so you know, I'm doing the same thing in the States that I'm doing here. So we're setting up a foundation here in Canada, but we'll be doing the same thing in the States. As I started talking about this project, literally, I can't tell you what I've manifested, right? Not only the $250,000 in funding, but the space for all of the artist galleries, the person who will build the actual infrastructure inside the galleries. There's a chief of a native band up in Northern Ontario that would love to put some money towards this as well. It's going so well that I actually want to morph it into not just creating a system for artists to create their NFTs and sell their NFTs, but I think there should be almost like an incubator inside of these galleries at some points where, listen, people out there in businesses can come in, view their artwork, and maybe hire them for the purposes of getting some of the graphic design work done for some of their projects in their business. Because in Canada, there are grants available for hiring people with disabilities. And so this might be a way of getting the work done. And I mean, some of these people are so talented, right? I think we discount people with disabilities too much. Some of them have absolutely phenomenal skills. And you think about it, this is a group of people that, you know, they've had to overcome challenges, right? And so their resiliency factor is 10x.
Which is really good. Could be good in any organization, really.
Yeah. And that was the issue too. I mean, I said, you know, I wanted the disability company that we're putting out there. The reason we're hiring mainly disabled individuals is that there is a skill set that some disabled persons have that would be really good for this business, but it's all about making them feel like they have a purpose. And not only that, there was a modeling done at Walgreens in the States. It was a distribution center where they did this. I hired predominantly disabled persons. Are actually they feel a greater sense of almost appreciation for their job. They're more connected. Think about it. Some of these people are just begging to get out of their parents' basements, right? They just want to have a life. They want to feel like they're contributing to society. And they're not always getting the chance to do that. So opening up the doors, the more we can do that, the more that we can help them. And I just happen to know a lot about the Registered Disability Savings Plan. And I know somebody who's building a business in Canada around that. It's one of the best kept secrets out there, right? We know that at the end, at the end of 2020. So if you qualify for what's called a disability tax credit certificate in Canada, and you're under the age of 59, you can put money into what's called a Registered Disability Savings Plan. And the bonus to that is that the government has grants and bonds that they add over and above that. Sometimes it's on a 2-for-1 basis, sometimes a 3-for-1 basis. I know this because my daughter has a disability as well, and I pushed really, really hard. This is where I go through that struggle. And maybe, Lisa, you asked me, where does that come from? The persistence piece. So my daughter was diagnosed at the age of 6. She was reassessed at 12. I had her reassessed at 18. And her doctor kept telling me, oh, I don't think she qualifies, but not me, was telling her she didn't qualify. And I said to Courtney, I said, that's not correct. I know for sure that you do qualify. So I put together a group of people at the end of, I think it was August of 2020. So I gathered a group of planners and I just called the group the Canadian, what do they call them? Professional Planners for Disabled Canadians Advocacy Group. Way too long, going to change it. But brought together all these people. And as part of that, I said to 2 of the people in the group, I said, I'm having struggles with this, getting this done. Can you guys help me? They said, absolutely, they can help me. So they stepped in and really helped us get this done. So I was able to go back 4 years. You can go back up to 10, but I was able to go back 4 years. I readjusted my taxes. We got her healthy refund from that. And then I put 5,000 into her RDSP, and now she's got 15,000 because it was on a, she gets the grants and bonds over and above this. But at the end of 2020, there was 362,550 Canadians who qualified. They got approved for the disability tax credit that have not yet opened an RDSP, or as of the end of 2020 had not yet opened an RDSP. So it is a big kept secret. Again, it comes around, one of the modeling of learn, right? So that's the very first line of all the organizations that I'm doing. It's around learning and awareness, and really getting as much information as we can out to people. And that's the other thing, because I talk about this, everybody has pretty much said, hey, we're willing to partner with you. March of Dimes has said, hey, we're willing to partner. The Ontario Disability Employment Network is willing to partner. So
simply because you're talking about it and you're bumping into people.
Constantly. I've got 2 people in the media. So I got reached to by a film producer out of California who said, hey, yeah, I did the Art of Inclusion back in 2018, and I love this project idea, and I'm behind you 100%. If you need me to push this out in the media, I'm happy to do that. By the way, I know actor ABC, and I think we can get that actor behind this as well. So the more you talk about these things, about what you're doing, don't hold it so close to the vest, at least for me anyway. It has worked because people have kind of attached themselves to my vision and mission, and said, yeah, I'm all on side with that. Any one of us doing this by ourselves would be monumentally more difficult,
100%.
right? But the collaboration effect, like, listen, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. You want to go far, go with others.
I love that expression. So tell me, for those of you on the call, how does that sit in your soul? What rises up for you?
I'm still walking, but what rises up for me is I'm just so grateful that I took advantage of this opportunity, and to hear someone like Christine speak, and to hear, the success that she's having and the great things, the change that she's making. Because when you do something you love and you're driven to do, which I am as well, Christine, and I feel so much of what you say. And I'm still at the beginning phases, and I feel like everything you say needs to be heard on so many different levels by so many different types of people. With regards to, people with disabilities, I could be in that category. I have ADHD. I say I'm the poster child. But you know what? ADHD is a special ability, and I teach the people that I work with and anyone that I talk to that ADHD is not once harnessed, it's magic. And I look like you, Christine, to feed ADHDers that are struggling, and I know that struggle all too well as a most likely to succeeder that didn't necessarily succeed for some time or had intermittent successes, and my story is not that different from many, many others. But I have the voice and the passion to make that change for others, because people don't understand their gifts, and once they start to grasp that, the sky is the limit. So what you do around your groups, I look to do something similar in a different way. But thank you. I think that everything you said is just phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It is really it's a heart-centered focus for me. Like I say, having, grown up with this all the way along, and now supporting so many people with disabilities. And, I don't talk about this. I rescued a young man off the streets. at one point who had, 17, no high school credits, bad circumstance in life. And I thought, gosh, some of these people are out here, and the reason that they're out here is that nobody advocates. Nobody has given them a hand up to bring them to a different place. And it was hard enough for me having to work my way through that, let alone somebody who's, not got all the abilities to be able to speak to adults, who has major anxieties and things like that. So it really opened my eyes. And I know a lot of people get judgy around, maybe people living, homeless people and people with like all that kind of thing. But I think we need to just put your predisposition, your judgments aside, and know that, listen, just sometimes with a little bit of advocacy, a little bit of help, you could change the life of somebody immeasurably.
Across many challenges, right?
Yeah,
And
and the
reaching a
more
hand out to help
the more you do to help this community, the disabled community, they are so loyal. Do you want to talk about like a business model that gets loyalty in spades? Serve a community of disabled people. They will tell every single disabled person about your business, right? Because you're focusing on them. You're trying to solve a problem for them. And they are very, like, brand loyalty is amazing amongst the disabled community. Treat them poorly, they'll be equally as glad to talk about that. But if you do something to serve them, they'll pay it back in spades.
So I'm going to ask a direct question, because I'm sure there's people on the call who heard you earlier talk about supports for hiring disabled people. Where do we find out more about that? There's a lot of entrepreneurs here who could maybe benefit from that.
Yeah, so I know that ODIN, the Ontario Disability Employment Network, is out there. There's also NPower. That's N like Norman Power. It's an organization that's out there helping. What Tanya said is correct. So I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but there was like a 60-60 or one of those programs, and I can't remember which one, but they were pitting one of the individuals that works on the network against a young man who had ADHD. And what they had to do was they had to look at a screen that had a pattern made with blocks on it, and they had to replicate the pattern with the actual blocks in front of them. And the person with ADHD was able to do that faster, looking at the screen far less, right? Sometimes the brains of people with a disability, especially with ADHD and things like that, their brain works in a different way, right? Almost creating like what Tanya said, a hyper ability, right? So, and they even talked in that program about changing the way that the interview process is completed, right? To be able to identify the hyper ability. It just means that you have to interview in a different way. So there's presumably organizations out there that are looking at that. I think NPower might be one of those. I haven't actually connected with them yet. But again, there's so much out there for people, companies hiring people with disabilities. And the government is like helping you, right? There's grants and things like that you can get for hiring. So for me, I think, the more I can do to help this community, to bring awareness, again, it's the heart-centered thing for me. My sister would have never had the ability. She just, she was strapped into a wheelchair every day. But that whole comment that was made to me with my mother when she told me that, I was lucky. She was showing me how lucky I am. And I haven't forgotten that, right? I know that I have a lot more ability than some other people may have. So I best be using it to the betterment of everybody around me.
It's quite a message to get when you're that young.
It was very powerful. I did not like going into that institution where she was, mainly because I didn't understand it back then, but it was a lot of people running, little kids running up to my dad, who is like a pretty big guy, running up to him and grabbing on his leg. And I didn't understand then, but what I understand now is the reason why they did that. So at that point in time, it's like, no, that's my dad, go get your own. But when I came through it and really realized what the issue was, you got to remember that this was back in a time when parents dropped their children off at these institutions and never came back. And never came back. We went all the time. We went to visit quite often. Probably could have went more, but I mean, we, life carried on for all of us, and we had to do what we had to do. But when I really realized all of that later on in life, it was sad. I was sad for them, right? And then I was like thinking, well, how could I have been so selfish to hold my dad so close and think, go away, but it was this virtue of again, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And having come through on the other side, now knowing what I know, right? We got to do what we can. I mean, we're all in this life together. And if you're not marketing to people with disabilities, you're leaving out a huge percentage of population. Like 1 in 5 people over the age of 15 today is diagnosed with a disability in Canada.
Really? Omar, you unmuted. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, no, I did. I think it's very clear in terms of, as you talk about the, your target audience that that you target your businesses for, that there's that, obviously there's that, emotional connection and, passion that you have because you have a lived experience that, that really connects to your purpose. So I think that's really powerful. The thought that comes to my mind is there one thing or two things that if you were to go back and, throughout your journey, your entrepreneurship journey, and say, okay, if I wish I knew this at an earlier stage, it would have accelerated and or probably made things a little more easier for you or resulted in maybe a little more impact from your work. If you have maybe one or two of those things that in hindsight, it would have been really great to know earlier.
My only wish is that I started my entrepreneurial journey sooner, right? I really pushed it off. I mean, I had a great corporate job. And I was struggling with like, how do I do this? And I think, a group like this, Edge, like any community that you can attach yourself to, whether it be Clubhouse, whether it be Edge, whether it be Zadazi, I don't care what community it is. But again, it's that having those people, a group of people, a family, and a group of like-minded people, that to me is super powerful. Because you're not just relying on yourself. You've got a group of really great confidants that you can go to and go, I'm struggling, right? Help me if you can with this area. So anytime you can attach yourself, I think, to a network like this one, like any of the other ones, I think it's going to help you. It's going to advance you much quicker than you trying to figure it out on your own.
Your story with all the connections you've made and the way you've accelerated forward fast, and you talking about, if you want to go far, go with others, that kind of brings up for me something that we see a lot at Edge in survey responses and in queries that people put forward among our membership around, like, how do I build a network? How do I leverage other people when, I'm a young entrepreneur, I haven't had the corporate career, or I just didn't, even if for some that did, they sort of had their community, but that was it. So what advice would you give them?
It's Mentor Monday, right? Find yourself a mentor. Find somebody who has achieved what you want to achieve and go and ask them. Listen, entrepreneurs are probably one of the most giving groups of people that I've ever met in my life, because every single one of them has been through the struggle that you're struggling with.
For those
And
of you
they
who have
are-
your camera off, I'm just going to jump in here and say that it's a little harder to connect with people when you can't see them. So if you want to get to know somebody, you kind of got to turn the camera on and talk to us, right? So just, not shaming you or anything, but it's a constant struggle on Mentor Monday to connect with people when they're not willing to turn their phone.
It's kind of hard to connect with a black screen and a white name. I don't know who anybody is, but I'm sure they're all lovely people.
Having said that, yes, this whole environment is meant for you to make those connections. So Christine,
100%. And that,
your
you know what,
advice then for this group
that
would
is my
be?
advice. Find like mentor. There's difference between mentor and coach and training, and mentor is really finding somebody who is at the level that you want to get to. Approach them. Most of them are probably going to be actually so appreciative of the fact that you've identified them as somewhere that they want to go to, somewhere that they want to, something that they want to achieve. And I think a lot of people are like, a lot of entrepreneurs, they are super willing to give back.
Something that we always talk about and really has proven to be true in the group that I run on Thursday mornings, which I put in the chat for those of you who came on later, is that everyone you need is in this room, like right here, right now. Everyone you need at this point in time is in this room, this Zoom room. And what we mean by that is not necessarily that, let's say, Carrie could connect Sanjana to is the right person necessarily for each of them, but that they might know somebody. And so how does that happen? It happens by you connecting and talking to one another and saying, hey, I'm looking for such and such, or I'm building such and such. And people are like, well, have you talked to so-and-so? And then that person makes an introduction for you. Next thing you know, you're talking to so-and-so, and then so-and-so says to you, well, you really should be talking to this person. And next thing you know, you're talking to this person, and they're just right down the right channel that you need to be. And maybe they're not exactly the right role, but maybe they know who you should talk to. And next thing you know, you're having a conversation with them.
And what you just said, Lisa, is really important. So for everybody that's on this call, if you're speaking with people and you're not constantly searching your database for people you can connect this person to, because let's face it, you may not be the right connection for that person. But if you are searching your database for finding people that you can connect people to, and you're making those connections, you're going to be somebody that people want to be around. You're going to actually have these things come back to you in spades, because listen, when you give, people give back. It's hard for them to get there. People don't always be the first giver, but giving does promote giving back. And when people see you as being a connector, I always pride myself on being a master connector amongst different things, right? I've got a huge network, and you never know, that one little connection you make for somebody might be the biggest difference in the world for them. It might 10x their business.
But I have an objection that I'm sure is going through some people's head, and that is this. Yeah, but Christine, you're an extrovert and you're not afraid to ask for what you want, and you're able to advocate for yourself, et cetera, et cetera. What about me? I'm shy and I only know 5 people.
Okay, Lisa, I was shy. I'll give it here. I mean, I'm speaking here now, right? If this were years ago, you guys, I wouldn't be here, right? I didn't order a meal in a restaurant till I was 12, when my mother threatened me with not eating unless I spoke my order myself that time. I think you can overcome any fear you want, right? It's how bad do you want something? Are you willing to be in fear and not speak up? Because that's not going to get you where you need to be, right? There's nobody hand holding us along the way, every step of the way, and going, okay, here, got to talk, open it up. Like, you'll gradually become more comfortable. You just got to start somewhere.
It's like a muscle, right? You're working it a little, right? The more you step into fear, the easier it is to step forward that far next time.
Absolutely. Right. And I mean, I think we it's our own, so what is keeping you in fear is your own limiting beliefs, right? You're thinking, you're putting into your mind what you think somebody's going to be thinking of you, right? Before they even have a chance to decide. Talk about putting out some energy that's probably not the best energy. That's probably not the best energy to be putting out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody have a final question for Christine? We have 7 minutes. Omar, I'm putting you on the spot since you're here.
No problem. Just wanted to first say just thank you for just sharing your experience, your journey, and also just sharing a bit about your company. If you do have a website, please drop into the chat so I can also click on the website to also take a look. Any of your social handles as well too. That would be really appreciated. LinkedIn's. I guess my question is well, first, how big is your team right now that you have, and what's your matrix to assess the right fit? Because oftentimes talking to different folks and different entrepreneurs, running the business and executing is really a challenge as well too. But being able to build that team and having the right fit is sometimes the biggest challenge. Recruitment and HR onboarding is one of the largest expenses for all businesses. So I'm curious in terms of what your sort of assessment criteria is for finding the right fit for someone to join your business.
So because I'm really in startup and I haven't actually launched the caregiver navigation yet. So what I looked for there to fill all the different hubs, the spokes of the wheel, if you will, was expertise, deep expertise. I've got a massive elder planning network. So, in the housing and transitions hub, that was finding somebody who has got a lot of great experience. There was also an individual who writes policy for the government that I reached out to. So again, as I spoke about this model, and I mean, I haven't unpacked it all here because it's a monumental beast of a model, but as I spoke to people about what I was building, I didn't really have to enroll them. They enrolled themselves in my vision, right? When I said, listen, this whole journey for caregivers is broken. It's really broken. And it's not fair, right? I'm sailing through it somewhat. I mean, there's still challenges, but if I didn't have all the stuff that I have, I wouldn't be able to move forward the way I am. So when I talk to people and I talk to them about what I'm building and why I'm building it, they automatically opt in themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think it's not just the why, it's also the how. Right? Simon Sinek talks a lot about that, but it's enroll people like in your why, but then tell them how you're doing it. And they will self-select. Right? And it's those people that self-select that come to you and say, oh my God, I love what you're doing. I want to work with you. That to me, tell me more. Why do you want to work with me? Right? And I can quickly assess, are you the right fit or not the right fit? It depends on, I listen very intently to what you're saying. You're saying the right words. I want you in the organization, right?
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to call that a wrap. Christine, this has been really inspiring.
Oh, I love it. Anytime I can come out and help more people, Lisa, It
Well,
just,
we'll bring it back again. We want to learn more about all these different opportunities, especially around how those foundations work. So maybe we should bring you back to talk about that.
yeah, really, it's
We've got quite a few people in the organization who've been wanting to do something like that. So, but I will say you're very inspiring. Your talk about how you stay in energy is good. How you've navigated through some difficult situations in building your venture. It's been really quite amazing. So thank you so much
oh, no.
for being with us tonight and being our mentor. And for those of you, camera on or off, who want to reach out to Christine, I'm sure she'd be happy to chat with you. And her contact information is in the chat.
Absolutely.
So without further ado, thank you. Have a good evening, everybody. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, I believe it is. Got another social impact entrepreneur coming, Ahmad Durrani.
Oh, you guys are going to love him. I was in a session
he's
of his yesterday.
fantastic. Yeah, really good guy. So
Yes.
2 weeks from today. So hope you'll join us.
Lovely. Cheers. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's been a pleasure to serve.